It has a population about Harcourt size. But the size doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Parades are exciting, and almost everybody wants to be a part of the action. It wasn't any different 2,000 years ago. When Jesus came to town, people wanted to see. They wanted to be where the action was. They had heard all of these stories about this guy who was going around healing people, bringing people back from the dead, delivering these sort of teachings that were just profound in a way that they hadn't heard before. And when the guy decided he was going to come into town, everybody turned out to watch. They sang, they waved palm branches, they threw down their cloaks on the road for him so the hooves of the donkeys didn't even have to touch the ground. It was a red-letter day for the most famous prophet, teacher, miracle worker of the day as he came into town. And that's an image of Jesus that we like to hold on to. We like to picture Jesus happy, riding into our midst and filling us with joy as we sing Hosanna to the to the Son of David, to this sort of messianic king figure. We love the glorious image of it. It's something that we cling to. It's celebratory. It's exciting. What's not to love about it, right? It's perfect and blissful. We see our salvation ride through the gates and right on into our midst. I mean, of course we're singing. Of course we're rejoicing. How could you not? But that's not the end of this story. Jesus rides into Jerusalem, but he doesn't just stop there along the parade route for photo ops, for some handshakes, and for kissing the babies. Come verse 12 in this chapter in Matthew, Jesus is riding right on up to the temple, where he turns over the tables and starts throwing the profiteers, the people trying to make dishonest gain, off the worshipers there in the temple. He throws them out. Then he goes on and starts teaching. For 3 days, he dishes out the kinds of teaching that riled the religious leaders of the time up. The things that got under the skin of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the high priests and the Romans, the wealthy and powerful in the society, everybody who held all the cards. Jesus manages to go, in the space of a couple of days, from the great man of the people to a royal pain in the neck. He doesn't just ride into Jerusalem to be mobbed by his loyal fans like some sort of messianic pop star, like a Jewish Justin Bieber. He comes in to rock the establishment to its core. I think we like the Jesus of Holy Week a lot more when he's still just sitting up on the donkey. He doesn't challenge us there. He doesn't threaten us there. He doesn't cause us to take a look inside of our own temples and see the corruption that's taken over them. No, he doesn't do any of this to us when he's just smiling and waving on a sunny day parade and we're all singing along. But we find in Holy Week that we can't just keep Jesus up there on the donkey like we'd like. And so, ready or not, we find that Jesus rides into our midst to shake things up. And so, those of us who cry out, Hosanna to the Son of David on Palm Sunday, become the same crowd that shrieks, crucify him on Good Friday. Our nature is fickle. Our bend is for equilibrium and self-preservation. And when somebody comes along and threatens those things, we nail them to the wall or to a cross. Leave us alone in our mess, please. Thank you very much. Or pay the price. And yet, despite knowing what awaited him on the other side of the gates of Jerusalem, despite knowing exactly what our nature as human beings is like, Jesus still rides into our midst. We're not left alone in our sin and mess. God's love just simply does not allow that to happen. No. Jesus rides in to do the thing that we cannot do, which is make things right. We are too far gone. We are weak, hopeless, and off course as human beings corrupted by sin. And so Jesus rides right on into our weakness, hopelessness, and lack of direction, and works them into our own salvation, even as they nail him to a cross, even as we nail him to the cross. After all, it's not the crowd's willingness to go out and shout hosannas till they're blue in the face that accomplishes the work of salvation. They don't praise their way into God's grace and mercy. Every Hosanna they shout, that we shout, is drowned out by the end of the week by bloodthirsty cries and the loud hammering of nails into wood. It's only because Jesus rides on, right on to the cross of Calvary, that they and us find faith and forgiveness, right orientation and relationship. Who and what we are rests entirely on who Jesus is and what Jesus has already done on our behalf. So, where's Jesus riding today? We're going to sing, ride on, O King Eternal. Where are we being led? We look out from here and think about the week to come, and we see ahead of us one last supper together, and then a betrayal, a lonesome night in a garden where not even Jesus' closest disciples can keep watch with him. And we go from there to trials, to beatings, and a cross. That's right. Jesus leads us right on to the cross this week. This isn't quite what the crowd, or what we, expected when we waved high those palm branches as we celebrated Jesus coming into our midst. Again, things were easier when all we had to do was sing praise and leave feeling good about everything. But feeling good isn't necessarily what following Jesus is all about at the end of the day. This way of the cross in which Christ leads us, this Son of David humbly riding into our midst on a donkey, is not fundamentally about happiness. All of this is about wholeness, forgiveness, purpose, relationship, community, self-giving love. It's about the messy, complicated things that make life worth living. About the sorts of things that give more meaning to our lives than we can ever make for ourselves. About the sort of things that speak truth to the lies that we tell ourselves, that everything is all right with our world just the way it is, and that everything is all right with us just the way it is. That cross that Jesus leads us to is a mirror that reflects all of the hollow promises that this world makes about what really matters. And as we join Christ in a death like his, by these waters and by the faith that God stirs up in our hearts through them, we find something beyond those empty promises of the world. Now, we find something empty, all right, but its emptiness is the fullness of where Jesus leads. That empty tomb, the resurrection and new life to which Jesus rides, points us to hope, to faith, to the reality of God's kingdom, breaking into the sham of a broken world that we find ourselves living in. And even now, that resurrection, that new life begins to transform this world. We find Jesus leading us on past what we know, what we see, what we simply call the way it is. We are now on course not for the way it is, but for the way it should be, for God's will, the way God wills the world to be. But we're not quite to that empty tomb just yet. Easter Sunday is meaningless without Good Friday. And so before we live again, we must die. We see Jesus riding on, leading on, bidding us to follow on a journey through death into life. So take up your cross, follow, and experience the power of this holy voyage this week. Jesus is here. Jesus is coming into our midst. Jesus does lead us onward. The hour has come. And so we follow him on to wherever he leads and to whatever he's up to in us and in this world.